What's going on, guys? Welcome to Victims and Villains. If you guys are new to this channel, we talk about mental health through pop culture, and we introduce you to a couple cool flicks along the way. And on that note, this is why I love Regal Cinemas, because thanks to their Mystery Movie Monday, we get to talk about a movie that is still 2 weeks away from release, and that is Champions. If you guys are new to this channel, my name is Captain Nostalgia. Let's talk about the movie. This movie tells the story of a coach who gets in hot water and is sentenced to community service, and that community service results in him actually coaching a Special Olympics basketball team. And it's also worth noting that this is a remake, an American remake of a Spanish film of the same name. I don't know the stark differences, I just pay attention during credits. First off, this movie is immensely and intensely heartwarming. Like, I'm not a sports guy by any stretch of the imagination. I couldn't tell you who won Super Bowls or who's been in the Final Four or anything related to golf or soccer or anything else like that. But when it comes to sports movies, I have a tendency to gravitate towards them because I like the inspirational feel of them. I like the underdog story, and this movie is in every way, shape and form an underdog story, and it's partially why I feel like it really leans into the heartwarming aspect. Like, in one hand, you have Woody Harrelson, who does an exceptional job in this movie, who's basically set up in the beginning of this movie as kind of being a coach that has a real anger problem, really has a short fuse. A short fuse has gotten him in trouble several times. He was basically on his way to the NBA, and that short fuse cost him an NBA, and he basically bounced around from uh, assistant coach job, third coach job, just random coaching jobs throughout the entire world. And so placing him in the world of the Special Olympics, it makes for a really interesting fish out of water element to this story. Really like the way that he's dropped in this world and really grows in it. His performance, he really excels in that. Character growth is something that I think this film does really well, but it really picks and chooses the characters that it wants to grow and wants to develop. Kevin Iannucci, who plays Johnny in this movie, is definitely kind of the breakout character of this movie, and because of that breakout status, he definitely has a lot of the elements of the film that revolve around him. Joshua Felder's Darius character also has a subplot that really revolves around him, and he feels like what initially starts out as kind of like a running gag throughout the film ends up actually being character growth developed later on. I thought that was interesting, but also at the same time, it's again reinforcing that you're picking and choosing which characters you are going to develop. I want to even say a little bit of a minor shout out here is James Day Keith, who plays Benny in this movie. He has an arc in this, and his again is definitely is a character development that is chosen. Granted, it has a payoff in the end, but it definitely feels like an odd choice to develop a character like him in the context of the narrative. Everyone else, like, there are definitely characters in this movie that have like shticks and kind of are really minimized to their shticks. I have a love-hate relationship with that because I feel like to some degree it really works for the comedy elements of it, but when you're trying to grow these characters, they come across really one note. Bradley Eaton's his character Showtime is probably one of the best examples of this. He plays a character on the team that his whole thing is that he wants to shoot basketballs backwards and is notoriously bad at it. And that's his entire offering to the narrative. Jesse Metcalf is also could be argued with that. He plays Marlon, who is just a walking encyclopedia. Matthew Vaughn Deer, he plays Craig in this. He's kind of the sex joke guy. All of these actors are boiled down to shticks, and there's no development here, and that's kind of the biggest crime of this story. And I get it. Sometimes when you do ensemble films like this, like teams, like, you know, stepping into the comic book, doing something like the Justice League or the Avengers, like, it takes a lot of work to balance and develop 6 or 7 characters. When in this case, you're balancing not only all of the team members, but you're also balancing the growing arcs of Kaitlin Olson, who also does a great job in this movie, as well as Harrelson in this as well. So it kind of is a hard juggling act. But I have to say that out of everyone in this movie, Madison Tevlin, who plays Constanello, I probably mispronounced that name, and if I did, I'm really sorry. She is the breakout star for me in this. There are so many scenes in this movie that I was dying laughing. Like, her character is just the absolute heartbeat of this film, and I loved every second of her. Like, she has this like intense comedy presence about her, and I really hope that we get to see more of her in future films, because she just works really, really well. Like, I would probably compare her to Janine Garofalo, just the way that she's really intense like that, but her comedy just element just works and just absolutely is exceptional for this film. Harrelson and Olsen are somewhat of a couple in this movie. This movie has a lot of subplots that run, and I'll talk about that in a second, but their chemistry was okay. I buy them more as the casual hookup that they are when they first introduced in the film, rather than an actual full-fledged couple later on in the movie. I don't know, just their chemistry was kind of awkward. I don't know if it's just me. It's a minor complaint. This movie does juggle a lot of different subplots in it, and those multiple subplots all go back to the weird development aspects of this film. Some really have major payoffs, like Felder's character, and some don't, like Eden's character. They just it makes strange narrative decisions, is what I'm trying to say. Because of those strange narrative decisions, the pacing feels a little bit awkward, and this movie feels and continues on to be a little bit longer than I feel like it actually should. Like, this movie, it clocks in about 2 hours, and probably honestly should. There's probably about 15 minutes and a subplot or two that you could cut from this to tighten up the narrative, and it would be a much, much stronger story. But I think where the story like kind of falters, the comedy works really well. So it's kind of like a trade-off. Like, it's not quite a 4-star film, but it's also not quite a 3-star film. So my Rorschach rating for this one is going to be a 3.5. I guess I kind of just did that to myself, didn't I? Well, let's talk about mental health. If you guys are new to our content, Mental Health Moment is where we take a theme of mental health out of the film, which we're reviewing, talk about it for a few moments in the hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. Some of the themes that are woven throughout the course of this deal with marginalization. I think if history has taught us anything in the last 5 years alone, is that representation matters. Regardless of your race, your sexual identification, your gender identification, your political association, your religious denomination or lack thereof, whatever the case is that you matter. Everyone matters. Treating anyone less than that is affecting not only their mental health, but their own self-worth and self-image. And to be honest, we're better than marginalization. People deserve better than marginalization. I love that there's a sequence in this movie early on before Harrelson really has a chance to grow. He's talking with Ernie Hudson, and Ernie Hudson is basically like, you need to be able to see people, not just the the ends of winning or losing in the game of basketball, but actually seeing and getting to know people and their stories. It's a worthy thought to keep in mind next time we try and marginalize someone or write someone off because of the way that they look, or the way that they have certain views on things, or just a number of any reasons of why we write people off. Because the things that we say and we do and we think have an effect on those that we interact with on a daily basis. So please be patient, listen, because at the end of the day, it also affects your mental health. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, suicide, or depression, click the links in the show notes below to check out our mental health resource library. And down there, you will also find links to our social media, podcasts, movie reviews like this one, links to our Patreon, and much, much more. Champions dribbles its way. I was trying to make a basketball reference, didn't work. Champions comes to theaters March 10th from Focus Features. And make sure that you guys hit that subscribe button down there. It's also down there. Have a good night, guys.